Okay, we'll begin. Tonight we're beginning a new series that will last for several weeks into the summer. The series pertains to a pasuk, a verse that is found in Navi Micha, that says like this: you can boil down Judaism to three things. Higid lecha adam ma tov u'ma Adonai doresh mimecha ki masot mishpat v'avat chesed v'atznei alechet im Elohecha. Do you want to know what God wants of you? What's the most important thing that He expects or demands of you? To do that which is just and right, to do acts of kindness, and to walk or live modestly or discreetly with Him. So what I decided to do, since we are approaching the high holidays, Yom Hadin, Yom Kippurim, Chodesh Elul is coming, it would be nice for us to focus on the three, perhaps most important fundamental ideas in Judaism, and I'm going to explain why they are the three most important and fundamental. But they involve doing justice, in other words, being honest, being upright, and pursuing acts of kindness with others, and being modest in one's ways, in one's behavior. So today, and perhaps in a couple of weeks from now, we'll be talking or focusing first on mishpat. Mishpat meaning honesty, doing things that are correct in the eyes of God and man. A very difficult area for some people to comply with, unfortunately. Next week, we will have a small hafsaka, a small recess, and B'ezrat Hashem will be coming back in 2 weeks. And we will continue with this. So, in this verse, Micha Navi tells us that this is what Hashem expects of us. This is all He wants. What is the meaning of this? There's an interesting Gemara that speaks about summarizing or trying to bring the entire Torah into proper focus. In other words, we have 613 commandments, but to bring it into proper focus, we can concentrate on just 11. Or, as another prophet says, we can concentrate on just 6 or 3. And finally, Habakkuk says 1. Each one appears to be saying that we can focus or concentrate in just a few to get the idea of what Hashem expects of us. What they really meant was, in speaking to their generation, that in order to be able to grow, in order to be able to mature as a Jew and be able to observe all the mitzvot, you can't think about all of them at once. It would be sufficient for you to concentrate on these particular areas that in that generation they may have been weak, that they needed further reinforcement. And that is why each prophet, including David HaMelech from the very beginning, told his people, told his generation to focus on certain ones. It doesn't mean that you don't have to do the rest are not important. All are important, but these are the basics. They reflect pretty much all the mitzvot in the Torah. So focus on these, learn them very well, practice them, and what these will do for you, whether it's the 11 or the 6 or the 3, depending on which prophet and which generation and time we're talking about, what they will do for you, they will enable you to grow. They will enable you to grow in such a way that eventually you will be able to fulfill, you will be able to observe all the commandments. You want a springboard to be able to do God's will? These are the springboards. These are the mitzvot that you have to focus on. So I'm going to focus on Micha. Even though I just said Habakkuk summarized all 613 with one, and that is Tzaddik be'emunato yichyeh, that the righteous man lives by his faith, which is a very powerful statement, of course. Faith alone will be sufficient. Yes, he is speaking especially to the generation of Mashiach at the very, very end, where so many Jews, unfortunately, will be so distant from Judaism that if they can just focus on their faith, on emunah, and strengthening their faith, they eventually will be able to fulfill or to come to fulfill all the 613. But these three that Micha speaks about are not only fundamental, they apply to all times, and they apply in a very, very important way in our times as well, in our generation, because these three areas, honesty or justice, righteousness, the pursuit of acts of kindness, all these three including emunah, of course, and including what he said, Hatznei alechet im Elokecha, which means to be modest, is especially important during the time of Mashiach in a different way. These three, unfortunately, are weak. And because they are weak, according to the opinion of many rabbis, they have been delaying Mashiach from coming. And so we need to understand why these are so serious, why they're so important, and how to go about strengthening them. Why are people so weak, or why do people fail in these three areas? And we need to talk about each one of them separately. But as you will see over the next few weeks, it is a perfection of these three areas that really makes one very mature. One who wants to grow in Judaism, it's not enough for him to memorize and to know the Torah. He actually has to work on himself. And I'm planning, B'ezrat Hashem, after the holidays perhaps, to begin a long series of the Midot. The Midot means human characteristics that need refinement at all times, whether it's anger or laziness or stinginess, and how to rehabilitate one who has these issues, how to deal with them. So for now, we're going to concentrate perhaps as an introduction to those midot on these three areas of asot mishpat, avat chesed, v'atznei alechet im Elokecha. These are going to be the three areas that we're going to be speaking about in the next 6 or 7 weeks, except for next week.
I have to go.
The rabbis tell us in different words, "Ha'olam omed al shlosha dvarim." The world stands on three things: ala Torah, ve'al avodah, ve'gmilut hasadim. The world stands on three pillars: the Torah, the service of Hashem, and gmilut chasadim, which means kindness. What does it mean that the world stands on these three? The world cannot survive if one of these pillars are missing. It stands. It means that the whole creation, the purpose of creation, involves these three. If you're lacking one of these pillars, there's no purpose for this world. If there's no chesed, people are selfish and don't interact and don't do for each other, God does not need that kind of a world. If there's no service to Hashem, there's no connection with God, He doesn't want that kind of a world either. And without Torah, people will not know how to operate in this world, how to live a life that is correct in the eyes of God. So you need all three, which means the pillars are there because that is the purpose of creation. These are important pillars because that is what God wants us to pursue or to focus on. That is what we need to concentrate on. In other words, throughout our life, we should aspire to perfect ourselves in these three areas. And these three are important to Hashem. So when the rabbis tell us the world stands on these three, it means that's what life is all about. A lot of people, unfortunately, in their life, you don't see these three, or you don't see two of the three. Their life is therefore void of meaning. That is how Judaism looks at someone who does not have these three things in his life, especially if he's Jewish. His life is void of any meaning. It's purposeless. He's here to just eat and sleep and work and pay his bills and go on vacation once in a while. If there's no Torah, avodah, and gemilut chasadim, that means it's aimless. What is he doing here? That's the idea of rabbis telling us why the world stands on these three things and why we need to always make sure that we are involved in these three areas. The difference between each one of them is as follows. The Torah, the significance of Torah in our life is like a GPS. You go on to your destination that you've never been there before. It's pretty far. It's not so easy. It's not always straight. Today, Baruch Hashem, we have the technology. Most of you, I think, are familiar with the GPS. It shows you the way. Right, left, 500 feet, right, get off. It even speaks to you. Unless, of course, you read the map. You memorize the map and you maybe can get along just fine. The Torah is a map. It guides the Jew how to live his life, what to do, what to accomplish. Otherwise, he would never know. He would know certain things. The rabbis tell us the soul is divine. And because of the divinity of the soul, it has in its subconscious mind some ideas of right and wrong. So nobody can ever claim, oh, I didn't know this was wrong. We know on our own certain things, but we don't know everything. So the Torah tells us, listen, this is what you need to achieve. You are the Jewish people. You have a mission. You have a mission. You have a job. You can't just waste your time. You have to accomplish. And everyone has his own personal, customized, unique mission. But as a whole, the nation has a mission. The rest of the world has their own mission. It's very limited. Ours is a little bit more involved, more complicated, but still doable. God would never give us something that's not doable. You can do it. There are hardships, there are trials and challenges, but it's doable. So the Torah is necessary for us personally, in order that we know what to do and how to do it as best as possible. The purpose of the avodah, or the second pillar, is our relationship with Hashem. We need to have a relationship with Him too. That's our connection. The service of the temple, or today, the prayers, which are in place of the sacrifice. We don't have a temple today, so the prayers, which we've spoken a lot in the last few weeks, act as our connection to God. It reminds us who gives us our livelihood. It's not our PhD. It's not all the years that we went to college. Obviously, we've become skilled, we've become learned, we've become experienced, and all that helps too. I'm not minimizing that. But we are reminded in this week's parasha, actually, who gave us the man in the desert? Why did He give us bread coming down from the sky to begin with? We could have planted potatoes. It was a lesson to be learned. The 40 years in the desert was a school. And life was not easy sometimes because we were being trained for the future. What will happen in the future after you enter Israel? You don't have a God speaking to you directly. You don't have the man coming down from heaven. You don't have a leader like Moshe. What are you going to do when you run out of food? What are you going to do when you're fired from your job? You're going to complain and just get out of Judaism and run away? Where is He? Yeah. You're going to turn to Him and pray to Him and remind yourself that He's the one that provides your livelihood. Same thing when somebody becomes sick. You're just going to go and rely on a doctor just because he has a nice white gown and he got a master's degree? He could have been at the lowest end of the class. He could have barely just made a passing grade. And you're going to trust your life in him, or you're going to rely on the doctor of all doctors? These doctors, of course, are messengers, but the ultimate recovery depends on His will. So the desert, the 40 years in the desert, was intended for us to learn many, many lessons on what God expects of us and how we're supposed to relate to Him. He's not just the creator of the world, He continues to supervise. And especially the Jewish people, we have a relationship with Him exactly in the same way a father has a relationship with his child. So when we get a spank from our dad, it's to our benefit. Well, how should we know that if we do not learn Torah? People who are poor, some people are complaining. People who are being persecuted are very unhappy with what's going on in their life. How should they figure out what this means? Well, that's why you have to learn Torah. If you don't learn Torah, you're going to have many questions. You will be puzzled. Why are these Jewish people being picked on? Well, no matter what we do, they hate us. And they blame us for everything. Why is it? Can we just get away from these problems? Can we just assimilate? No, God forbid you cannot assimilate. Not only won't it help you, it will make things worse for you. So a Jew needs continuous guidance. He needs the avodah, which is the kesher, the connection with Hashem through prayer, today, prayer. And number 3, he needs to be involved in acts of kindness, because that is the area of ben adam lechavero. There are 2 important areas in the Torah. One is ben adam lamakom, between us and God. When I put on tefillin in the morning, when I put a mezuzah on my door, I'm doing something in the service of Hashem. But there's an area of commandments that deals specifically with my relationship with my fellow Jew or fellow human being, fellow neighbor. I need to be a good person to him too. So therefore, the third area, or the third pillar, involves mitzvot, or our connection, or our interaction with the rest of the world. So all of these 3 areas are very, very important. Now, just to impress upon you how important the area of honesty is, we're speaking now especially about honesty and doing things that are just and right. When we head upstairs after 120, Bezat Hashem, after we leave this world, they will interview us upstairs. They will ask us a bunch of questions. And I always joke about it, they know everything about us. They've recorded everything. They have a very sophisticated video upstairs that records pictures and voice and even thoughts. Why do they have to interview us? Did you do this? Did you do that? What happened here? What happened there? They know the answers to all the questions. The purpose of the interview is partially to embarrass us. And that sounds cruel, but embarrassment is a form of gehenom. It is a form of tikkun. Is when the neshama heads upstairs, she knows the truth. She is pure. She has nothing to hide. Right? As human beings, we have interests, sometimes conflict of interests. We're biased and not always objective. We don't always, therefore, see clearly the truth. But when we head upstairs, everything is so clear. When they ask us in interviews, did you learn Torah? Did you get married and have kids? Or the question that we're talking about tonight, Nasata v'natata bemunah, did you handle yourself in business honestly? Were you honest in business matters? Were you just? Were you fair? They know the answers. The purpose of the questions is not just really to embarrass us, it's more than that. They tell us, listen, had you been honest, had you done things a little bit differently, your life would have looked differently. Had you not been so strict, so upset, so angry, so temperamental at your wife, you would have had a beautiful marriage for 56, 57, 60 years. And children and grandchildren who would have loved you and shared all the happiness with you, instead of drifting apart from your spouse and from your kids as a result of some midah, some weakness that you had. So these questions are asked in order to tell us, listen, what a wasted life. It could have been so different. You had the potential for a different outcome had you done things a little bit different. So that's one of the ideas behind the interview. But what happens at that interview upstairs is they focus on the most important things of life. And one of them is, Nasata v'natata bemunah, did you do business honestly? Were you an honest person? And we need to understand, why is this so important? Why is honesty or being just such an important part, or should be an important part of our life? In life, in reality, we're always challenged. And anytime it comes to money matters, business dealings, there are sometimes many, many challenges. What is a bribe? A bribe is basically somebody's asking you to do something illegal, but he's going to give you a nice amount of money, right? Should you take it or not? That's a challenge. That's a test, as we call it, a nisayon. Life is full of challenges and tests depending on your job and position and who you are. If you're a judge, if you're a police officer, and you're being bribed, right? There are all kinds of pressures. How are you going to react, or how are you going to deal with the pressures? These are nisyonot. We all go through different kinds of nisyonot. But what's the purpose of the nisayon? Usually when we use the word nisayon, a test, the one who does it wants to find out something about you. The AAA, or I should actually say the DMV, they're going to give you a driving test. They want to know if you can drive. So they're testing you with question and answers to know, or to see if you know how to drive. That's fine, that's understandable, but God knows everything. He has to test us. What are the tests in life all about? What do we need tests for? He knows. Why did God test Avraham Avinu? Major tests. Major tests. He knew that Avraham Avinu would pass with flying colors. Et kol abchinot, all the tests, all the nisyonot. What's the purpose of the test? See, God knows, but we don't know. He knows the outcome, but we don't know it. When we are exposed or go through a test, you know what happens? A tremendous amount of potential is exposed that we didn't even know perhaps that we had. Wow, I was able to do it. I didn't know that I could do this. I didn't believe in myself perhaps enough. This makes the human being grow. This makes him mature. This is for his benefit in Nisayon. On top of that, of course, Judaism believes that for every act, positive act, you are rewarded. Had you not had this opportunity to act, you would not be rewarded. So here you're asked to do a job. It may be a little bit challenging, but if you pass it, you are rewarded. And the reward may be immense, depending on what the challenge is. Can you imagine a Jew being challenged? Either you convert to another faith, or we put you on the gallows, or burn you. Like many Jews had that particular challenge in the Inquisition and other times of our history. Do you know how much their reward is? It's incredible. We cannot even imagine the reward, the Zohar says, of all those who gave their lives as Jews. To give your entire life. It's not one moment, it's not one day, it's not just one small test. To give your entire life for what you believe in, it's a tremendous challenge. We don't have, Baruch Hashem, that test today. It's difficult. We have other tests. But that not only brings out the potential, it is also to elevate the individual, to make him grow, to increase his zachar, his reward, and to be a zechut for him. He may need a merit. If he passes this test, maybe it will protect him from some illness that he was supposed to get in the future. Maybe he was, God forbid, supposed to be involved in a car accident, and Hashem the night before sent him a test in the form of a poor man coming to his door at 11 o'clock at night. The guy could say, how dare he knock on my door at 11 o'clock at night? Or he could say, please come in, I see you're hungry or whatever. And if he does that correctly, he may be saving his life. So the Zohar calls that poor man a gift. A gift to that Jew to give him this merit, this zechut, that will perhaps protect him from some imminent danger that he may be involved in. And Hashem, of course, who is all kind and who wants us to live, gives us opportunities to save ourselves in their merit. So the nisayon, the test, the challenge is not for Hashem to know, it's for us to know where we're holding, where are we standing, are we strong, are we weak, it is for us to know. Plus, to elevate us, to increase our sechar, to teach us, the nisayonot are also very good teachers, and to strengthen us. If we're able to deal with this challenge, it will, B'ezrat Hashem, give us the strength to be able to deal in the future with additional challenges. Just like a soldier gets all the training, difficult, arduous work, but all that training pays off. When he is in battle, he's able to perform good because of all that training. So the nisyonot, therefore, act also as a good exercise for us to be able in the future to succeed if those challenges ever surface again. That is why the rabbis tell us that the greatest and most important achievement that a human being can have in this world is spiritual growth. Because physical growth, depending on your genes and how well you eat, you're going to be 5'10", 5'11", 6', 6'1". That's physical growth that's going to stop at the age of 18 or 20. That's physical growth. Well, there's one growth that can go on forever, and that is your belly. That, I think, can grow even after 20. It actually begins to grow after you get married. But besides that kind of growth, the real growth, the most difficult growth, is the spiritual growth. To become a real man, to become a gentleman, or as we say in Yiddish, to be a real mensch. That takes a lot of strength and courage, and that's a lifetime job. You never stop, you never retire from that. But that's real growth, because in the process of becoming a real mensch, a real decent human being, you're going to be doing battle with the Yetzer Hara, with the evil inclination at all times. Husband and wife have all kinds of challenges. She's had a hard day, and her husband is coming out from a long day. You know how easy it is for them to get into a fight? He has a long day, hard day. She's had a difficult day too, whether with the children or something else happened. And if they don't control themselves properly, they're going to have a fight, and they're going to fight about something silly. Because really, this is something silly. It's all about nerves. It's all about being in a bad mood. There's no substance to that. But it's these small little fights for silly things that eventually leave scars that never heal. And after 10 years, they go to a marriage counselor who can't help them. Because they pressed the wrong buttons. They did the wrong things. Instead of building the relationship by doing positive things, they did all the wrong things. All the wrong things. And they could have helped themselves. They could have controlled themselves had they had a little bit of guidance. No matter how different people are apart, as long as they're as we say in Yiddish, they're kop, as long as their head is healthy, they're normal, they can live and get along. It's not easy. People from different cultures, different backgrounds. There's so many differences, which causes misunderstandings. Can you imagine somebody from Poland, Polish mentality, marrying somebody from Morocco? Let's just think of an example. I mean, they're totally different cultures, backgrounds, customs, language, food. This one is gefilte fish, this one is couscous. You know, it's just everything is so different. You know, and the language barriers. And even if they speak this a common language, they both speak English. But still, you know, there's so many differences that usually creates not too much harmony. It creates distance. It doesn't create good feelings. Unless the two people want to succeed, unless the two people are sincere, unless the two people are good people. Then they look away at the differences. They realize through their intelligence, what's the big deal? I'm going to argue about food. If she's a nice woman, she'll make my couscous too. You know, or if he's nice to me, then he will buy or do something that I like too. You compromise, you learn each other's ways. You sit down and you have a talk. You know, I think we have a misunderstanding here. It's because you think this way and I think this way. And by the way, most of the misunderstandings between men and women is because men speak a different language than women, even if they're from the same country. Most misunderstandings have to do with not mentality or language barriers. It's just that one is a man and one is a woman. And they don't understand each other until they live many years together and realize they are very different from each other. So if you get into the marriage with the right attitude and you approach problems with the resolve of resolving them, not just running away from them, then you can deal with almost any issue. And that's the beauty of a sound relationship where the two are very, very different, but they understand that the purpose of life is to get along, to have the kids, to build a home together, to make a mishkan for Hashem, where they can have guests and share a beautiful Shabbat table, discuss issues, learn from each other, teach each other, learn together, affect other people's life. Life is short. Before you know it, it's gone. I mean, anybody who's here in this room over 40, it's downhill. I'm sorry to say it. It sounds a little bit, but yeah, that's what 40 is downhill. Because David HaMelech said it. Listen, the average age span of a human being is 70 years. And if you're lucky, you get 80. And if your genes are really good and you didn't smoke, maybe you go to 90. All right, but the average, I think, in this country today is 76. And if you're already in your 50s, I mean, how many years you have left? Why are you going to bicker and fight and ruin it? Enjoy it. Make the best of it. Go out on a trip together. Smile. Buy yourself gifts. Enjoy life. Why do you have to worry about all these silly things? There's no time for that. Otherwise, you're going to spoil a chunk of years that you could have used in a very happy way, in a good way. There's so many things you could do together that you share in common. The Wi-Fi. But anyway, the reason I tell you all of this is because it's a lack of focus. That's all it is. Lack of focus, and people are not thinking right. They're not focused on what they should be focused. Jewish people have this benefit that the Torah tells us what to do. It's like imagine going on a freeway that was just paved, and it's night, and there are no lights. How are you going to know that you're on the right lane and you're not swerving into the next lane? They sometimes put, those pieces on strips that you can actually feel on your tire, because you may not be able to see the dividing line. So those things help you, especially if you're falling asleep on the wheel, chas v'shalom. That's going to wake you up, hopefully, right? Some people need a wake-up call, Otherwise, they're just going to drift. They're going to get off the lane, and God forbid, they may not get to their final destination in peace. So a Jew is lucky that he has the Torah that acts in such a way as to show him the way. But the problem is not everybody follows the Torah. And tonight we're going to see this briefly, one of the examples that the Torah speaks so much about. Stealing, cheating, misleading, lying. All of these things are associated with asot mishpat that we began to talk about, to do the right thing, to be just. And for some reason, so many people fall in this trap. It could be so easy for a person to do the right thing. Easy. It's not so difficult. But he has to be focused. He has to understand what he has to accomplish. And if anything that he sees that is questionable, that may take him off that path, he should be wary of it, not take a chance. You want to get to your destination. You don't want to take a chance and do the wrong thing. So that's why I chose this topic, because the topic of Asot Mishpat is a very sensitive, very delicate topic, because if a person does it or does not do it, will make a big difference in his life. Will he be a builder or a destroyer? Human beings are very powerful. Very powerful. They have the ability to destroy themselves. The nuclear bomb is the best example. Human being is very powerful. He has free will. And it's through these kelim, these vessels or these tools, these actions, mishpat, that one can destroy or build. Building one's life, building a life that is exemplary for others to follow, for his children and grandchildren, will depend, of course, on how good of an example he is, what kind of an influence he has. But it could be destructive too. Taking other people's money, you may be destroying other people's life, destroying the world. Do you know what it would be if there's no justice, and if there were no courts, no jails? Each one, the rabbi tells, would swallow each other, each human being. People wouldn't care. It would be anarchy. Baruch Hashem that we have courts and police to maintain law and order. But unfortunately, it's not enough. How many people, despite all the law and order, get caught on a regular basis and go to jail? Why don't they learn the lessons from the first guys? It happens over and over again. And Solomon tells us, well, En chadash tachat hashemesh. There's nothing new under the sun. There were always crooks, and there will always be crooks. What's this, guys? What? Once there was a rabbi who was sent to see a Jew in jail, a thief. The rabbi was having a very hard time. He came to town to collect funds, and he was almost ready to give up and go home. He says, I might as well go home. I'm not doing anything here. I'm having such a hard time collecting funds. So anyway, in the meantime, they asked him to visit a prisoner, a thief. He goes and visits the thief, and he tells him, No, ataroe lo kidai, lo mishtalem. You see, sof ganav letliyah. He tells him the famous words, you see, crime doesn't pay, as we say in English. In the end, you're caught. So the thief tells the rabbi, you have it all wrong. And he tells the rabbi another famous saying in English. If you fail, try and try again. If you don't succeed, right? That's how it goes. Try and try again. I didn't succeed now. I was caught. The next time I'll succeed. They won't catch me. The thief wasn't giving up. He's going to try again. The rabbi was amazed. What was he amazed? Not at the thief. He was amazed at himself. This guy wants to try again. Why should I give up? I'm going to also try. I'm going to stay in town. I didn't succeed today. Maybe I'll succeed tomorrow. We can learn something even from a thief. But the point here is that unfortunately people don't learn from their mistakes, and they definitely don't learn from the mistakes of others, and we have to try to understand why. The words Asot Mishpat, B'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk a little bit more about all the details of Mishpat 2 weeks from now, but just to give you an idea, it does involve various aspects of cheating or overcharging, not paying on time, just being honest, not lying. There are various forms of all of this. It's not just armed robbery, stealing. There's all kinds of ways where one can be guilty of the same. Rabbis tell us, you want to know who's a righteous man or not? One of the greatest tests of figuring out who is a tzaddik and who's not is the test of money. Hamivchan shel hamamon, shel hakesef. The test of money and how one handles himself in the money area can determine if a person is righteous or not. In other words, the rabbis tell us something different. If you see a guy who's very careful with his prayer, he kisses his tefillin when he puts it on and puts it off, and he conducts himself as a nice gentleman, but in the business, he's not honest, run away from him. Don't have anything to do with him. The guy is really rotten. In other words, ultimately, don't look at his appearances and how he behaves in other areas, like tefillin, tefillah. His prayer may last an hour and a half, and he's shaking like a big tzaddik. And he does all kinds of other things. He wakes up early in the morning to come to prayer. He learns Torah at night. You say, wow. No, don't give him your money. Don't trust him with your money or anything if he's a crook when it comes to business matters. Money will be the test. And that is why most of you perhaps have heard, how do you recognize a human being? What are the ways of recognizing? Let's say you just met him for the first time. Obviously, what good is it if he gives you his business card? That will not tell you too much about it. Fancy schmancy business card. What are you going to look at? Rabbis tell us, Adam nikar bekoso, bekiso, bekaaso. You want to get to know somebody? Sit down with him and have a drink with him. See how he drinks. See what issues or topics does he talk about when he gets a little heavy in the drink. In drinking, there's two things. How he drinks. Does he drink a lot? Talk about alcoholic beverages. How he drinks. And what does he say when he drinks? Because nichnas yain yatzah sod. When a person becomes drunk, he reveals to you all the secrets. So if you suspect your husband is doing something not right, maybe give him a drink, and he'll tell you all the secrets. No, I don't think it's a good idea. But anyway, otherwise he's going to do it to you too. But you can tell from the drinking, how he drinks, and what he says during his drinking, what kind of a gentleman he is. The next one is bekiso, with his pocket. How do you know somebody by his pocket? How he spends, what he buys with his money. Is he giving or not? In the areas of money, you can tell a lot about a person. And bekaso, when he gets angry. How often does he get angry? At what does he get angry? From the anger of a person, you can tell a lot about him. So the rabbi says, you want to get to know somebody? Through these three areas, you can know a lot about an individual. Why were the rabbis so emphatic? In other words, why did they point out that this area of honesty determines a lot? Why does it determine so much? Because the rabbis tell us the yesod, the foundation of all the mitzvot, really is ahavat hazulat, is the love of another human being. Not just your own selfish love, is to love somebody else. That is the fundamental, I guess we can call it the foundation of the mitzvot, is to love somebody else. As the Torah tells us, ve'ahavta lereacha kamocha, love your fellow Jew as you love yourself. That is the foundation. In other words, that is a key ingredient in the fulfillment, of course, of all the mitzvot, but it's not just in the fulfillment of all the mitzvot. That is the basics of everything. Why is that the basics of everything? Because, by the way, through ahavat azulat, by loving another Jew, by loving another individual, that will enable you to love Hashem. So if you want to have a good connection with God, you want to eventually love Him, as it says in the Shema Yisrael, v'aftat Hashem Elokecha. How do you do that? Well, you first have to love human beings. You can't jump steps. So ahavat hazulat, the love for another human being, love for another Jew, is very, very important. And if you do so, that will enable you to reach the higher level of love, which is ahavat Hashem. So therefore, since ahavat hazulat is so important, the love or the concern for the welfare of another human being, if a person does something that is completely opposite to that, stealing, cheating, lying, then he's so far removed. And therefore, he's definitely not focused, and he's definitely not on the right track. Because he's doing the exact opposite of what's the most important thing of all, and that is to be concerned for somebody else, not to care so much about yourself. And that is exactly what David HaMelech points out. Who is the closest person to Hashem? Who can go to the mountain of Hashem? Who can go to the very top? Who can be together with Hashem? Neki chapayim, one who has a clean hand. A clean hand means that one who does not take from others. And I saw another commentary say, the hands clean means two things. Not just not to take what's not yours, but not to use your hands in an abusive way to hit someone. So anybody who is a neki chapayim, his hands are clean, uvar levav, his heart is pure in the fear, in the yirat Hashem. Bar levav means a pure heart, meaning that he truly fears, respects Hashem. Asher lo nasa lafshav nafshi, that does not swear falsely, v'lo nishba lemirma, and does not falsify or swear falsely, not only in the name of Hashem, but to cheat others or to take that which is not his. This man, of course, is blessed. We see an emphasis, therefore, here on honesty. Another pasuk, very similar pasuk, conveying the same idea. Also in Tehillim, Mizmor LeDavid, Adonai mi yagur be'olecha, who lives with you? Mi yishkom behar kodechecha, who is with you? Olech tamim, one who walks sincere, who's a sincere person, doesn't hurt anybody. Foel tzedek, does acts of righteousness and just. V'dover emet bilvavo, who always speaks the truth. These are very key ingredients in being a good man, a righteous man, in having a very strong and healthy connection with Hashem. These are the basics. Sincere, God-fearing, doesn't hurt a soul. People only have good things to say about him. He's a man of a word. A word is a word. He's a man of truth. It doesn't say all 613 here. It says 3 here too. And what do they have in common? Poel tzedek. He does things just. He's righteous. He's correct. We'll talk about it in a couple weeks from now, but I'll tell you a quick example. Let's say you had to borrow some money, okay? It happens. You sometimes have to borrow money. It's best not to. Why should you? But let's say you had to. Would it bother you that you have somebody else's money? Would you try to repay it as soon as possible? Some people yes, some people no. The one who is bothered that he has somebody else's money, who's always trying to pay it back, as soon as he has it, first thing he does, I'm not going to sleep until I repay the guy. That's good. That means he's careful with somebody else's money. Not everybody's, of course, that extreme. You don't have to be that extreme, but you have to be cognizant. And B'ezrat Hashem, we'll talk about that too. Some people are just simply forgetful. And if you have that problem of being forgetful that you owe somebody money, you better write it down. Because if you don't write it down, that means you're negligent. That means you don't care enough about the loan. If you really care about somebody else, I just took money from him. And as we're going to explain that too in a couple of weeks, this thing here, the human mind, is a very good attorney. It could justify anything. This guy has millions of dollars anyway. So what if I don't pay him back now? I might as well go to Hawaii and enjoy myself with him. Mapitom, whoever gave you that right, it's not your money. You can't use somebody else's money for your own personal, in other words, unless you have permission. Unless he knows what it's for. Unless you really, really need it for something. But if you have that money came back to you, you give it back. First thing, you give it back. You have no right to hold on to somebody else's money. You have no right to hold on to somebody's wages that you owe him. Pay him right away, if you have it. But some people excuse themselves, justify, rationalize everything through this powerful attorney in their head. Money is a very, very delicate area. The people have a lot of weakness, and that is why the rabbis tell us, Ruban begezel, mi'ut be'arayot ve'kulam be'avak lashon hara. When it comes to the general population of the world, and you find, or you list all the weaknesses or all the sins that people commit, the majority of the world fails the test of gezel, of thievery, of stealing. But I don't mean actually stealing. When it comes to gezel, it means anything. Using people's property without their permission is also gezel. So when it comes to the area of gezel, ruban, the majority of the people, make a mistake here and there, which constitutes a form of gezel or stealing. Miut, there's a minority that is weak in the area of arayot, of prohibited relationships. And then kulam b'avak lashon hara. Unfortunately, the majority of the world makes the mistake of saying things about others they shouldn't say. Some of it is gossip, some of it is similar to gossip. It's called avak, the dust of lashon hara. People are not careful enough in what they say. So, in the same way that Hashem loves a person who's correct and just, you can imagine Hashem hates somebody who's exact opposite. And that is why when you go to the parasha that talks about the Mabul, the major flood in the world, that was a very corrupt generation, a very sinful generation. They did many, many terrible sins. But guess what was the straw that broke the camel's back? What was the sin that brought the flood on them? Vatimaleh haaretz Hamas. The Torah records that the world was filled with Hamas. Like Hamas now in Gaza? Hamas. Hamas means to steal. They were robbing, taking from each other, not just money, the wives of each other. They were taking everything. And the Torah records that as being the sin that caused the flood to come. In other words, they have been doing everything for a long time now. But what did it? What made Hashem upset to bring about the flood is if they are not having a good relationship amongst themselves. It's one thing Hashem says when they don't care about me. But even if amongst themselves they're not right, they steal from each other, mabul. Flood comes for all kinds of things. But here the Torah records it was the Hamas. It was the money matters that they were not careful with each other's money and property, and that's what did it. Okay, so briefly, let's just for the next few minutes talk just about why people are so weak in this area of money. There's various explanations, but the main idea of why people in general are weak in the area of money is because of lack of emunah and bitachon. Their emunah, their faith in Hashem, the trust in Hashem, the reliance in Hashem is weak. If a Jew really knows clearly that his parnassah is set on Rosh Hashanah, that Hashem directs everything through his mazal from day one when he was born, that there's ashgacha pratit, divine providence that can even alter that mazal. Everything is in the hands of Hashem concerning livelihood. If he really believed in that, it wouldn't bother him that somebody opened up a store across the street that competes with him. Oh no, now this guy's going to compete with me. I've been around for 25 years. He's not going to compete with you. He's not going to take one penny away from you that is coming to you. Do you know what one who has bitachon does when he sees the competition opening up a store across the street? He goes over across the street and he says, Mazal tov b'sha'a tova. He salutes him. He wishes him well. Mefargen lo, as we say in Hebrew. And you want to know what a real Baal bitachon does, who really has very strong bitachon? He goes over to the guy and does not only tell him Mazal tov, if you need my help, I'll give you my help. I'll tell you who to call, where to buy, where to get the best deals. He should give away his numbers and all the experience that he has to his competition. So, well, of course, because he has bitachon in Hashem, that guy's not going to take away one penny from what is coming to him. How many people do this? There are various levels in bitachon. We spoke about this in the past. There's various levels of emunah and bitachon. But the stronger you are in your faith in Hashem, these things don't bother you. It's so pashut, it's so simple. But for some people, it's not. So that's why there are so many people who are weak. Then you have all the thieves, the crooks. This guy got away. This guy was not caught. You think he's not caught, and that's why he got away. And don't worry. First of all, could be down the road he will be caught. And second of all, when thieves are not caught, and when some people get away with it and live what appears to be a prosperous life with money that was taken illegally, it could also be because they have some zechut, some merit that is keeping them alive. Most people don't have such a special, powerful merit that will keep them alive. At the end, the thief, the corrupt guy, the crook, will be caught. He'll go to jail. He'll pay for it. And the rabbis tell us if you put your eyes on money that is not yours, not only will you not get what is not yours, they'll take away what was yours. So in the end, you lose more than what you gained. And there's a pasuk. There's a pasuk like that in Yirmiyahu. Whoever makes his wealth, his money, not in a right way, it will leave him in the middle of his life. So the commentaries tell us, well, there are some people whose money didn't leave them in the middle of their life. So you know what the commentaries say? Yeah, it doesn't have to be that their money leaves them. They could leave their money behind. It's either they leave, they go, or their money goes. One of the two will happen. Unless, of course, there's some merit. Sometimes there's a merit. But usually, any monies that we're taking non-kosher means is cursed money. And Rabbi Menachem Mendel of Rimenov used to say, if you ever see Jewish religious children who grew up in a religious home, studied in yeshiva, were well versed in Torah, and all of a sudden when they become older, and porkim ol, they remove themselves, they stop observing, all of a sudden, you know what it could be? Their parents fed them food with money that was stolen, or money that came from gambling. Money that comes from gambling on a regular basis, not coins that you put in the machine. That's not called gambling. That's called wasting your money. Yeah, money that was you gained from gambling, money that was stolen or acquired in an illegal way. If you buy food with that money and that food goes into the mouth of your children, chaz v'shalom, it could have a very detrimental effect on them. Same thing with non-kosher food given to them too. It has a detrimental effect on the neshama, on the soul of a Jew. So that's how he explains why some of these children, that perhaps there are other reasons, some of them perhaps were fed with money that came from illegal sources. I just want to add that some people think it's okay to cheat or to steal from a non-Jew. Chas v'shalom. That is a big chilul Hashem, a desecration of God's name. The Zohar speaks tremendously about how harmful that is to the Jewish nation, how it weakens our shefa, the blessing and abundance that is supposed to come down to the Jewish nation by taking shefa that does not belong to us from the goy. They're human beings, just like anybody else. There's no permission because of the man's religion or different culture to cheat him. On the contrary, the Torah puts so much emphasis on being careful with strangers. You should love the convert. You have to be very sensitive to people who are different from you, not take advantage of them. There's no permission to do that. Yes, we're different, but that does not mean you can steal from them. It's a tremendous kitrug. It brings tremendous accusations on the Jewish people. As it is, anybody who's a crook, anybody who's not honest, if he lives his life by doing these things on a regular basis, he doesn't realize how many kitrugim, how many accusations he's bringing upon him. Rabbis tell us, just remember that even though a person may have a kupa shel avonot, a bag full of sins, the one that is sitting on top that will bring the most accusations on him will usually be a lack of honesty. He's not careful with Shabbat. All right, that's terrible. He doesn't always eat kosher. It's terrible. All right. And we're talking about somebody who knows. He doesn't do this thing. But if in this bag there is gezel, that means he's not an honest person. Gezel barosh. The kitrug, the accusation of gezel will always be sitting on top. That will harm him the most in his business. That will harm him the most in succeeding in any areas of life. If chas v'shalom, God forbid, there's an accusation against this individual for being not honest. I want to finish with two stories about what a person who's not careful with money, what it could do to him. The Kabbalah says that many times people who were not able to pay back what they took from others have to come back begilgul, in a reincarnation. Unfinished business. Many times they come back just for that. Pay it off. What they took, now they have to give back in some way. There was once a Bachur Yeshiva who went home with his friend. And on the way home, he wasn't feeling well, so he had to go home early. They stopped off at an inn to stay overnight. He didn't have enough money with him, one of those boys, to pay the landlord, and he told her, "Listen, on my way back, I will bring with me or send you the money that I owe you." He owed her like $7, small amount of money. On the way back, he couldn't go. Only his friend could go back to yeshiva. He just wasn't feeling well, and he asked his friend, take the money and please give the landlord the money that I owe her. He couldn't make it back. He was very sick, and sure enough, he did die from his illness. And that his friend who took the money never gave the landlord the money. Totally forgot. He forgot. Sometime later, I don't know if it was a couple months later or whatever, the rabbi of the yeshiva, Rav Chaim Voloshin, was walking late at night to check on the boys in the yeshiva, and all of a sudden he sees the spirit of the soul of that Bachur yeshiva walking through the hallway. And of course the rabbi wasn't scared because I guess he was used to this kind of things. "Oh, how are you? How are things up there?" That's how he greets him. He says, "Baruch Hashem, they received me very well. I was all day long learning Torah. I was God-fearing. I did all the mitzvot. Baruch Hashem, they received me very well. But there's one problem. I can't go further to my final resting place because I have unfinished business." He says, "You have unfinished business?" He says, "Yeah. I owe $7 to this landlady. I never paid. And even though it wasn't my fault, my friend forgot." He told him the story. Upstairs, they don't care. But because I was such a good young man, because I did intend to pay her, they at least allowed me to come and appear to you so that you can help me pay back that loan." So, of course, the rabbi immediately told a friend who was so sorry that he had forgotten, and he went to pay off the loan. And, of course, that boy eventually went to his final resting place. You see how for a few dollars, they make a big deal of it. A few dollars, that's all it was. There's a second incredible story of a horse, an amazing horse, that was working. In those days, olden days, they used to use horses or donkeys to do a lot of work, whether it was to grind or was to plow the fields. This horse was doing double the work of all the horses. Double the work. You know what? That has value. A horse that does double the work of all the other horses. Everybody wanted to buy it. And they offered him a good price, the guy who had this horse. And he was hesitating. That night, I don't remember all the details of the story, but basically that night he had a dream with a former employee that he had who had died. Please don't sell me. Please don't sell you? What? What are you talking about? Sell you? You're dead. What do you mean sell you? No, I'm in the horse. My soul is in the horse. I'm reincarnated in the soul. I was sent back here in a reincarnation in a horse because I was not an honest employee of yours. I took some of the money. I pocketed some of the money that was not mine. I did not work as intended. They sent me back to repay you by working double the amount of an average horse. So please let me stay a little bit longer so I can make up all that I'm supposed to make up for you. This is my tikkun. And sure enough, within a week, the horse died. The horse collapsed. The tikkun was accomplished. Man being sent down in a reincarnation, temporary reincarnation, in an animal, in a horse, to make up that which he stole from his boss. As we're approaching Rosh Hashanah Yom Kippur, I want to remind you that rabbis tell us, mitzvot ben adam lamakom, anything that we may have done wrong between us and Hashem, Hashem will forgive us, B'ezrat Hashem. But mitzvot ben adam lechavero, between us and our fellow Jew, he won't forgive us until ad sheifayes et chavero, until you ask for forgiveness, until you are able to restore what you took from him, until you're able to repair what you've done to him, until he forgives us. So that's an extra effort that we have to make, as long as we're alive, is to think, God forbid, if we hurt anybody, whether it's with words, or whether it's by taking their money or doing anything, that in order to get proper mechila, proper forgiveness, the only way about it is not only to ask Hashem, obviously, but to actually approach. And that's not easy. Some people are embarrassed. But it's better to be embarrassed here than to be embarrassed there. It's better that we do all the repair and corrections here than we have to do it there and later come back. And that is why we are reminded that there are certain things that people take for granted, people don't respect enough, people think they're small, but they're really serious. And one of those is asot mishpat, is to be a righteous man, to be fair, to be just. This is an area that requires tremendous amount of learning in order that we should not make any mistakes. So B'ezrat Hashem, we'll be learning a little bit more about it in the next couple of weeks. Thank you.